everyone, this is Kayla Petrasek, and you have reached the Go-To Aesthetics Coach podcast, where we will be diving deep into medical aesthetic devices, skincare, and business development tactics that are going to take your clinic to the next level. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Go-To Aesthetics podcast. We are already at episode 35. And moving forward, I'm going to be uploading a new episode every consecutive week released on Mondays, so stay tuned. But this week, we're going to talk about going from the injector or practitioner to the CEO and the identity shift that changes everything. So thank you for showing up. Thanks for being here. As you may know, my name is Kayla Petrasek and I am your host. And I really just want to dive into what might be the most uncomfortable conversation that you'll ever have about business, but also the most liberating one. So let me ask you a hard question. And I want you to really think about this. Are you running your clinic, or is your clinic actually running you? Because if you are still the one hustling behind the treatment chair in and out every single day, constantly putting out fires, checking Instagram DMs between patients, handling supply orders, trying to do everything through your lunch breaks and just staying late to catch up on admin work, and then you're expected to also show up like a CEO. You're acting like an employee inside your own business, and probably the most overworked, underpaid employee at that. So here's what I see happening in like 95% of aesthetic practices. The owner becomes the chief of everything officer, not the CEO, the chief of everything officer. So they're the lead injector or practitioner, the customer service manager, the marketing director, the operations coordinator, and the janitor, all rolled into one exhausted person who can't understand why the business won't scale. And here's the brutal truth. That's exactly why you feel burnt out, stuck, and like your revenue has hit an impenetrable ceiling. And it's not because you lack skill, talent, or even work ethic. It's because you're actually operating from the wrong identity right now. So today we're going to talk about the single most powerful transformation that you can make. And that is the shift from thinking like an injector to thinking like an actual CEO. And I'm going to show you exactly how, step by step, you can go into this role and finally feel like you're scaling your clinic without losing your mind and your health and your passion for what you do. So by the end of this episode, my goal is that you're going to understand why working harder will never get you to where you want to go. And you'll have a concrete roadmap for making the identity shift that separates struggling practitioners from a thriving business leader. So let me tell you about 3 different clinic owners that I've worked with, because I bet that you're going to see yourself in at least one of these stories and be able to relate to it. So let's talk about Sarah. So Sarah came to me making around that 25K mark per month in our clinic in Toronto. And on paper, everything looks successful. She was booked solid, 6 weeks out. Her patients absolutely loved her. Her Google reviews were stellar, and she had a steady stream of referrals. But Sarah was completely miserable in her business. She was working 60 plus hours a week, seeing patients from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and then staying until 9 p.m. to handle admin tasks. She was doing it all, injecting, performing laser treatments, microneedling, answering phones, like when her front desk person was swamped, managing inventory, running her own social media, responding to online reviews, and even cleaning treatment rooms at the end of the day. Exhausting, right? When I asked her how much time she spent working on her business versus in her business, her answer actually floored me. It was less than 5%. And this is what I see with a lot of cases. So maybe an hour a week if I'm lucky. That's what she would tell me. And I call this the perfectionist trap. So she genuinely believed that no one could do anything as well as she could. So what she did was she kept everything under her direct control. And the problem was her need for control was strangling her growth. So fast forward 6 months later, after Sarah made the identity shift and stepped into the CEO role, she had doubled her monthly revenue, 52K per month, and it was the only one, it was only working in the treatment chair about 3 days per week instead of like the original 6 that she was doing before. So she ended up hiring and training a nurse injector. She implemented systems for her follow-up care, She was spending 40% of her time on strategic business development instead of those daily, like repetitive operational tasks. The difference wasn't her clinical skill, because that had always been excellent, really. The difference was that her identity and how she chose to spend her time. So let me share another story with you. Okay, so Jennifer ran a clinic in Calgary and she was like always buzzing with activity and had lots to do. She wore this 70-hour per week work badge as a badge of honor, constantly talking about how busy she was. She thought that being busy meant that it was her being successful. But when we analyzed her numbers, she was working twice as many as compared to other clinic owners while generating actually 30% less revenue per hour. And, she was busy, but she wasn't profitable. So she was active, but she wasn't effective. So she had confused motion with progress. She was always doing something, but very little of what she was doing was actually moving her business forward. So she was stuck in what I call reactive mode, responding to whatever urgent situation demanded her attention rather than actually proactively building the systems that will prevent those urgent situations from arising in even the first place. So the transformation happened when she realized that the most successful CEOs that she knew weren't the busiest. And that's when, like, that means that they were the most strategic in their business and making the right actions. They didn't have more hours in the day. They didn't have better, like, they had the better systems for using those hours. So 6 months after making the CEO shift, she was working about 45 hours a week, instead of that 70. So a big change. And, but her revenue had increased by 60%. How? She stopped being the person who did everything and became the person who built systems for everything. It's about stopping taking the burden of feeling like you have to play every single role and wear every single hat in your business. Now, let's talk about another story. So, Jackie owned a beautiful clinic in Vancouver. She had all the right devices, equipment, a great location, like some solid clinical skills. But every month she felt like she was starting from zero. So, every month it was just a reset. And she didn't feel like she was building on anything. So she never knew she had a good month or a slow month, like didn't know what to predict. Her revenue was completely you never knew what you were going to get. And when I asked her about her growth strategy, she looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. She's like, growth strategy? Like, I just do good work and hope people refer their friends. But she was operating without any intentional business strategy behind the brand. She was excellent at delivering treatments, but had no system for consistently attracting new clients, maximizing the value of existing clients, or creating predictable revenue streams. So, after implementing CEO level planning and strategy, her business transformed from chaotic to predictable, right? And with that, we need to have predictability in business because we need to be able to um, understand like what numbers are coming and what actions to take place for planning. And she ended up developing a systematic approach to her marketing, to her client retention, and just overall revenue optimization. So we really worked together on identifying the gaps and filling them. So within 1 year, so 12 plus months, her monthly revenue became not just higher, but consistent and predictable. So what all three of these transformations had in common was a fundamental shift in their identity. These clinic owners stopped seeing themselves as skilled practitioners who happened to own a business and started seeing themselves as business leaders who happen to have clinical expertise. So, when you do that, that shift just changes everything in your business. And after working with many aesthetic practitioners, I've identified that three core traps that that keep clinic owners stuck in this, injector or like practitioner mode instead of stepping into the real CEO leadership role that they're meant to be in. And these aren't just operational programs, they're identity problems that require fundamental mindset shifts to overcome. So let's go over the traps. Trap number one is the control trap. No one can do it like I do it, right? I've been there, I've done that. And it's easy to get stuck in this, especially if you're a new business owner. So this is the most common trap that I see. And it's also the most financially devastating. So it sounds like this: I need to personally see every consultation because I'm the best at converting clients, or I can't trust anyone else to perform treatments because my standards are so high. If I delegate, the quality will suffer and clients will be disappointed. But here's what's really happening when we are saying these things: you confuse being indispensable with being successful. And you think your value comes from being the person who does everything when your real value should actually come from being the person who creates systems that ensures everything gets done well. Now, let me show you like the math on what this actually costs you so we can really make this tangible and real. If you're an exceptional injector, let's say, who can generate like, let's say $300 per hour in treatment revenue, but you're spending 20 hours a week on admin tasks that could be handled by someone who's making $20 an hour, you're literally paying $6,000 per week. So that's like 280 per hour times 20 hours to do $20 per hour work. Okay. That's over $300,000 per year in opportunity cost. But that financial cost isn't even the worst part here. The real cost is that your business becomes completely dependent on you and you can't take time off without revenue dropping. What kind of life is that? Like you end up getting entrapped, like you're not going to be happy and you can't scale beyond your personal capacity. So you get stuck. You end up becoming the bottleneck that actually prevents your own growth. So to break this down into like another case study, I worked with a clinic and they were convinced that they had to personally perform every injection because clients she just had this mentality like clients expect to see me. I'm the face of the brand that I started. I'm the face of the injectables and they like expect to see me. So she was working like 50, 60 hours a week and she plateaued at the 27K per month. We implemented a gradual strategy and basically she started having qualified nurse injectors observe all her consultations and treatments so that she could feel confident and tangibly the nurses were getting the mentorship that they needed and the skills that they needed to really match her brand and her skill set. Then she began co-creating with those nurses, gradually transferring responsibility. And we ended up just creating detailed protocols and training materials that captured her techniques and standards. So finally, she transitioned to an oversight role where she was able to focus on complex cases and business development, like a CEO who's going to scale their business well. So the result of this is within 8 months, the nurse injector was handling 60% of routine treatments and her monthly revenue actually increased to just over 45K per month when she was working around like 30 to 40 hours per week. And most importantly, the client satisfaction actually improved because the nurse injectors had more time to spend with each client, giving that personalized, customized support. And she could focus on the complex cases where her expertise added the most value. Okay, so let's go into trap number 2. This is called the busy badge. So being busy means being successful. Okay, so this trap is about mistaking activity for achievement. It's the clinic owner who constantly talks about how busy they are, how they don't have time for strategic planning, and how they're always running around and doing this and doing that. Being busy has become a status symbol in our culture. Like, I'm just going to call it out. But in business, being busy often means being disorganized. It means you're spending time on the wrong things or you're doing the right things in ineffective or inefficient ways. Working 60 plus hours per week, but revenue isn't scaling proportionally. Constantly feeling like you're putting out fires everywhere instead of preventing them. No time for strategic planning because you're always dealing with like urgent issues. Believing that if you just work harder, everything's going to fall into place. Wearing exhaustion like a badge of honor. So the reality check here is I want you to track your time for like 1 week. Write down everything you do in 30-minute increments. And by the end of the week, categorize each of them as either CEO work. And again, CEO work is that strategic planning, system building, team development, business analysis. And then also categorizing in manager work. So that's where you're overseeing operations, quality control, problem solving, those things. And then in technician work, so this is where you're performing treatments, you're doing your admin tasks, general customer service. Okay, so those 3 subcategories, I'm going to say them again. So CEO work, manager work, technician work. If more than 60% of the time is spent on technician work, you're not running a business, you're running a very expensive job. So this is something that I like to talk about a lot in this podcast because we open these companies to be company owners, to be entrepreneurs, to be CEOs. We don't do all this to just be another worker, right? So I want to run through another real life example with you. I really like bringing real world insights into the theories and strategies that I'm talking about. Let's say Jennifer is her name. So Jennifer from Ottawa, she was like the poster child for the busy badge that we just discussed. And she was in her clinic like 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, like the typical go, 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 doing it all, and was constantly stressed, and wearing that stress, bringing that home to her family and friends, was always behind on something, couldn't understand why her competitors seemed to be growing faster while like they were working less, which is super frustrating. But then the breakthrough came when we did a time audit. So this is where I dive deep into the business with you and asked the appropriate questions, and we identify the gaps. Okay. So Jennifer discovered that she was actually spending 4 hours per week on tasks that could be automated. Okay. And we live in a world where automation, if you're not using it, then you're behind, because we need to utilize this. This is a fast paced world and it's not getting any slower. So we need to work again, smarter, not harder. So yeah, 4 hours per week we were able to dedicate to more automated technologies, and then 8 hours per week on tasks that could have been delegated. We just tackled that. And then there was about 6 hours per week on tasks that didn't need to be done like at all. So sometimes we can get intertwined into the things like the nitty gritty of like you just feel like you have to do it, but you don't actually have to do it. And then it takes up your time. So what we did here was we implemented what I call the CEO time blocks. Okay. So what this looks like is, let's put an example here, like Monday mornings, strategic planning and business analysis. Again, CEO activities, right? Wednesday afternoons, team meetings and system optimization. And then Friday afternoons, marketing and business development. This is just an example. Okay. Within 3 months, Jennifer was working 15 fewer hours per week while her revenue actually increased by over 20%. The secret was not working harder. Again, it was working on the right things. And often we just don't know what these things are, but that's what I'm here to work with you on. So let's get into trap number 3 that I see show up. And I'm going to call this the no plan problem, like I'll just figure it out as I go. So this is one of the most dangerous traps because it feels like flexibility, but it's actually chaos disguised as adaptability. Clinic owners in this trap are constantly reactive instead of proactive. They respond to whatever urgent situation demands their attention rather than following an actual strategic plan. So the no plan problem manifests as revenue that fluctuates widely from month to month, marketing that consists of posting when I remember to, no clear goals beyond grow the business, decision making based on gut feelings rather than actual data, constantly feeling like you're starting from zero every single month. Without a strategic plan in place, you're essentially gambling with your business, and it doesn't change until you make these changes. So you might have good months, you might have bad months, but you have no way to predict or control which ones they'll be. And this is working blindly. This creates constant stress, and it makes it genuinely impossible to actually build a sustainable, scalable model for your business. So more importantly, without a plan, you cannot delegate effectively because your team doesn't know like what they're actually working toward. And you can't measure progress because you haven't defined what success actually looks like. And you can't make strategic decisions because you don't have a framework for evaluating options. So now that we've identified the traps, I want to talk about what the solution is here. So the shift from the injector practitioner to CEO isn't just about changing what you do. It's about fundamentally changing how you think. So this is a mindset practice, and it's about your role in this business that you've created. So I am the business, right? Focus on perfecting the technique. Measure success by hours worked, thinks in terms of individual appointments, reacts to problems as they arise, values being needed and indispensable, or avoids delegation to maintain control. All those things that comes from an injector or like practitioner mindset. Okay. Now, when we want to shift these mindsets to a actual CEO mindset, it's going to sound more like I build the business. Focus on optimizing systems. I talk a lot about systems because they are important and they will save you and scale you. Measures success by results achieved, tangible, actual results, organized, putting the right things in place. Thinks in terms of lifetime client value. We're not looking for quick wins. We're strategically doing long-term plans. Prevents problems through planning, values creating scalable processes, delegates to multiply impact. We're not taking it all on ourselves. We understand the power of delegation and we're not scared of it. Okay, so now let's talk about the 4 phases of identity transition. So phase 1 is awareness. Okay. This is going to be like weeks 1, like 1 to 2, the first 2 weeks. And this is where you actually recognize that your current approach isn't sustainable. So we've brought awareness to this. You acknowledge that working harder isn't the solution and that you need to actually start working differently. And you're open to it. You may be uncomfortable, but you're still open to it. So some of these key activities is going to be like time tracking to understand where your hours actually are going. This is super important. Revenue analysis to identify patterns and opportunities, and an honest assessment to what you enjoy versus what drains you. And I want you to really reflect and think on this. Like, no one's watching, right? Like, truly, what do you enjoy and what drains you? And you might not like what pops out of that. You might not like that something drains you and that we need to make a change here. But the reality here is that people change, and the things that used to light us up sometimes don't. So let's get real about it and let's, strategically align things. So phase 2, this is the experimentation phase. So this is going to bring you into like that week 3 to week 8 mark. And this is where you start testing small changes without completely overhauling your business. So you begin to delegate minor tasks and implement basic systems. And some key activities could be delegate one admin task per week, create standard operating procedures, SOPs. So I've talked about those before. Those are like your routine processes in place for the company. Block time for strategic planning, even if it's just 2 hours a week, block it off, get it done. And then phase 3 is going to be the implementation phase. So this is going to be, weeks like 9 to 20. And this is where you make significant structural changes on how your business is going to operate. So this is where you're going to be like a lot of action goes into place. You're going to hire new team members, maybe even fire some. You're going to start to implement major systems into your business and start spending meaningful time in your strategic role. Some of those key activities might look like hire and train key team members, create comprehensive systems for client management, establish regular planning and review cycles. Now, the whole thing in business is like we can implement and change and all these things, but we always need to remember when we implement, we need to do that for a bit and then we need to look back and revise. There's always a cycle in business. About every 90 days, we need to be revising everything that we've implemented. So that's why quarterly, it's good to have quarterly reviews of all the different departments and things going on in your business and just see what's working, what's not, and change, because we should always be changing our business models because things in the world around us are changing. And if we aren't, we're not working on an efficient model. So phase 4, this is mastery. So this is where we've gone to like 21 plus week mark. And this is where the CE role becomes natural. You're comfortable like with the delegation, your systems are running more smoothly and working for you. You spend most of your time on high value strategic activities. And what that looks like is you might have a continuous optimization of the systems and processes in place. You could have long-term strategic planning and business development that you work on, that you have certain team members work on with you. And then you have that mentoring and developing piece with your team. So now I want to take all this and get a little practical with it. And I want you to design and execute your first CEO day. Okay. So this is fun. I want you to make a dedicated block of time where you step completely out of this technician role and step into the strategic leadership role, even if it's scary and uncomfortable. So this is what it kind of like looks like. So your pre-CEO day, the preparation, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to schedule protection. Okay. So done like 1 week before. I want you to block 4 hours on your calendar. And I recommend like a Tuesday or Wednesday. Clear your schedule completely. No patients, no routine tasks. Inform your team that you will be unavailable for operational issues. Turn off your phone to like turn off the notifications and your emails. Okay. And then I want you to set up your environment. So you could do this the night before just to prep. Choose a location away from your clinic. It can be a coffee shop, it can be a home office, it can be a library. Like find a place that you feel zen in. And I want you to gather your materials, so your notebook, your laptop, and the last 3 months of financial reports. This is how you prepare a CEO day agenda with specific time blocks, okay? Now, part of this is like the mindset prep. So this is the morning of the first day. Remind yourself, today I am the CEO and I'm not the technician. So first of all, get yourself in that role, get excited, feel empowered, feel like a boss that you are, and set intention to think strategically and not operational. Okay, this might feel uncomfortable because it's different. And you just go with it. I want you to be brave. So commit to making decisions that are going to actually like serve your long-term growth in your company and make big moves. And this is what the 4-hour CEO day agenda could look at like. Hour one is where you're going to look at your business analysis and assessment of your revenue. This should take about 20 minutes. Review the last 90 days of revenue and identify any trends, any patterns that you're picking up on, and like any anomalies. So, what's working and what's declining here? Make a point of highlighting that. And then you want to look at your profit margin review. So, this is like another 20-minute exercise. Calculate profit margins by service type. So, which treatments generate the highest profits? Is it injectables? Is it lasers? Is it your retail product? And which ones are actually draining your resources? And then I want you to look at your client lifetime value assessment. Again, it should take about 20 minutes. Maybe the first time it takes a bit longer, but eventually it will be around the 20-minute mark. So analyze your top 20 clients. What do they all have in common? And how can you attract more clients like them? Because your top 20 clients are going to be your advocates. They're going to be the ones that have been coming to you consecutively over and over again. We want to find more of these because this is how you build the right kind of client base. So we really want to nail down what is our ideal client, and we need to know everything about them. So in the second hour, this is where you're going to work on systems and operations, and you're going to kind of audit that bottleneck that you identify. This process typically takes about half an hour. So where is your business operating inefficiently? We need to start thinking about that and recognizing and identifying that. What processes consistently cause problems or delay? And then I want you to look at delegation opportunities. And again, this will take probably about another half an hour. So delegation opportunities look like sorry, talking a lot today. I record all my podcasts in one day for the month. List every task that you currently handle personally, just you on your own. And which ones of those could you delegate? And again, have some sway with this. It might not, might feel sticky at first. And I'm talking from personal experience. Like my company was a one-woman show for the first 3 years. It actually was really hard to start delegating. But once you do, and once you see the power of it and how much it just scales your company, and once you realize it's the only sustainable way, you start to love it. So figure out like what are you doing in your business personally? What can tangibly and realistically be delegated? And which ones could be automated with systems? Okay. Because there's kind of two sectors here. We want to utilize AI and technology, and we want to utilize real humans and have them do the things that we don't necessarily need to do because our time might make a higher ROI elsewhere. And we also just want to free up our capacity to have creativity in our business so that we're not completely overwhelmed and restricted. Now, the third hour is where you can focus on your strategic planning. So that's the 90-day goal setting. And this exercise typically takes about 20 minutes. So if you could only achieve 3 things in the next 90 days, what would they be? Write those down. And then you want to have a resource allocation. So this is about 20-minute exercise. What investments, such as like time, money, people, would have the biggest impact on your specific goals? So I know this is a lot, guys. You might have to like pause this and listen to this again, but this is like high level, really good stuff to go over. Okay. So then we want to go into the third hour. So the third part of the third hour, so the last 20 minutes, is strategy development. So what's your plan for achieving each 90-day goal? What are the specific steps? Write it down. Sometimes if you don't write it down, you don't plan it out, it doesn't get done. Now, we're on to the fourth hour of your half CEO day. This is where we do action planning and commitment. So we want to do priority ranking, and this should take about 15 minutes. Now, of all of the opportunities that you've identified, which of these will be or will have the biggest impact on your business? So, you really just want to identify that. And then, then we want to go into implementation planning, again, 30 minutes. For your top priority that you identified, create a detailed action plan with specific deadlines. Again, we're really taking big task problems here and we'll keep honing it down into small tasks because that is how we achieve things in life. You want to make $1 million, $5 million. That's your goal. Let's keep breaking it down into the small, tangible steps until it's done. This is literally how you can do it. You can make anything happen this way. So then we go into commitment and accountability. This is like a 15-minute exercise. Write down what you'll do this week to start implementing your plan. Okay. And then your post CEO day. So that was the 4-hour day. This is what you want to do with your immediate actions post. So within let's say 24 hours. You want to schedule follow-up time to review the CEO day insights, and you want to be able to communicate relevant decisions to your team, because there's one part you like of you doing all this work, but it's really important that you're relaying it to your team, because your obviously your team is part of your business, and there's going to be issues down the road if you're just keeping this all in your head but not sharing it to everyone else on the team. So let's just tackle that now and make that a process now. And you should be blocking regular like CEO time on your calendar, a minimum of 2 hours per week, where you can really work on these high level strategies. And then you should actually have a weekly follow up. So this is where you review progress on those action items that you developed in the CEO day. And you want to adjust plans based on what you're learning. Like, it's very fluid. Some things are going to change and you're going to learn it as you get into the nitty gritty of it. And then you want to schedule your next CEO day. So this really should be a minimum done of once per month. And in the grand scheme of things, 4 hours in a full month of business to be the CEO is not like, it's not too much, right? So it's very, very important. And now in terms of CEO day, like success metrics, because metrics are important, KPIs are important. This is how we track and measure things. After your first CEO day, measure success by one, clarity. Do you have a clear vision for your business direction now? Two, prioritization. Have you actually identified your highest impact opportunities? Three, what's the action plan here? Do you have specific measurable steps to take? And then energy. Do you actually inside feel more excited about your business and the future of it now because you feel like you're getting on the right path? Now, once you've completed your first CEO day and you started thinking strategically, here I'm going to share some advanced strategies for fully stepping into this new role. Okay. So this is what I call the delegation framework. And basically it's an effective like delegation skill that most clinic owners never develop because they're afraid of losing that control. So I'm just going to share a systematic approach on how to do this. So level one is information delegation. You start by delegating information, gathering tasks, have team members research, compile data, or prepare reports that you review and act on. It's simple tasks. Level two is recommendation delegation. So ask team members to not just gather the information, but also provide recommendations based on that information. This is part of their learning as well. And this is, this is how you develop people. And you get to still make that final decision. So you don't have to feel worried about it. Now, level three is action delegation. So this is where you delegate specific tasks with very clear parameters. So the team member can take action in a defined boundary and they still report the results. And then level four is like the full authority delegation. So this is where you give team members complete authority over specific areas or decisions, and they own the results and only involve you for like the major issues. So every decision that you face should be filtered through this framework. So one, is this a CEO level decision? Does it significantly impact long-term strategy? Does it affect multiple areas of business? Does it require high-level judgment or expertise? Now, two, if yes, apply the CEO thinking that we talked about, right? So what are the long-term implications? How does this align with your strategic goals? What data do you need to make this decision go well? Now, number three, if it's no, delegate appropriately. So who has the knowledge and the authority to handle this? What parameters or guidelines do they need? And how will I track the outcome? CEOs think in systems, not individual tasks. And for every single challenge that you face, just ask root cause analysis, like, why did this problem occur? What system failure allowed it to happen? How can we prevent it from happening again? If we solve this problem, will the solution work as we grow? So this is something that you can use as like a scalability assessment. Another thing you can think of is like, can the system handle 2 times, 5 times, 10 times our current volume? You can ask yourself that. You can ask yourself, what will break first as we scale? And that's how you identify and you have like a scalability assessment in your business. And then we can look at leverage opportunities. So how can we solve this problem once and for all and benefit from the solution many times over and over? What processes can we automate or systemize? Where can we create, multiplier effects? So at the end of the day, after having guided, dozens of clinic owners through this type of transformation, what I've identified are the key factors that determine success or failure in that injector practitioner to CEO movement. One of those success factors is embracing the learning curve. The most successful clinic owners understand that becoming a CEO is actually a skill and that it has to be developed over time by taking certain actions and trying different things. And it's just like becoming, a skilled injector. Like we have to learn it. They're willing to actually invest time in learning business strategy and leadership and thinking and developing systems into the business. What this actually looks like is reading business books and taking courses, working with mentors or consultants, attending conferences that are focused on strategic business growth in this industry, joining peer groups with other clinic owners. And then on the opposite end of this, like some common failure points is like when clinic owners who expect to naturally know how to be CEOs, they do it without developing the skills. Patience is the process here. And that's something that we need to remember going through this. Everything takes time. Everything good in life takes time. So successful transformations, they do typically take 6 to 12 months. If you're expecting immediate results here, I'm sorry to tell you, but it's probably not going to happen immediately. Nothing in business is quite immediate. That's sustainable. We can have trends and things like that where we get immediate results, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about like how to formulate and build a foundation, a solid foundation to scale your business in a strategic way. These things take 6 to 12 months minimum. The clinic owners who succeed, they understand this and they will plan according to this and have realistic expectations. They don't expect those immediate results and they don't abandon the process when things get challenging and they get fed up. So, what this can look like is setting realistic timelines for major changes, celebrating the small wins along the way because we want to keep it fun and you should celebrate everything really. Staying committed even when temporary challenges arise. Stick in it. You're in this for life, right? So it's going to be hard sometimes, and that's okay. Understanding that short term chaos often precedes long term improvement. And then, some common failure points is just expecting immediate results and giving up when the first month, second month, third month doesn't show a dramatic improvement. So when something like that happens, it means we need to do an investment into like infrastructure. So successful clinic owners understand that scaling requires investment in people, systems, and technology, and they're willing to actually reduce short-term profits to build that long-term scalability. So that can look like hiring team members before they're, like before they're absolutely necessary. Let's say, like you just make that move. Investing in quality systems and software, creating comprehensive training and documentation, building financial reserves for growth investments, all of those things. Another thing that I see is trying to grow without actually investing in the infrastructure needed to support that growth. So making the wrong moves too fast before, kind of skipping, what's the saying, skipping the gun, jumping the gun. What we can do here is just have one, really clear communication with team is super, super important. The most successful transformations actually involve the entire team understanding and supporting the vision for growth that you put into place. So having that clear communication, it's going to prevent resistance and it's going to create the buy-in all around, which you need. When this happens, it looks like regular team meetings to discuss processes and changes. Sorry, guys, sometimes I actually have to pause this because my family bombards in here with something. So my husband, Nathan, maybe you know him. He's the Airlace BC rep. And my son, Caden. They've picked up this new hobby of collecting hockey cards, or maybe they're basketball cards. I don't know. But anyways, they're collecting these cards that I have no interest in. But okay, cool, good for them. I support it. And they came in here and Caden's like, what's the card? He's like, $10,000 card. Anyways, so I had to pause this. And they came in here, they're all excited. But back to it. So we were talking about communication with team, right? How important that is when you figure out all these things, your business, your vision, like you're sharing that with your team. So important. And what that kind of looks like, it's like those regular touch points with the team, clear explanations of why the changes are actually being made so people understand the background history and like they can think about that and understand the process. It's one thing just saying something, but like they need to understand it. Creating advancement opportunities for growing team members. Like that's the whole idea. Like we want to foster growth with our team. Now, a common failure point with this can be making changes without actually explaining the reasoning. So, as I mentioned, like that reasoning part's really important because we may understand the reasoning behind something, but if our team doesn't, like it doesn't all click in there, it creates gaps and a lot of other things that we don't want. Confusion and resistance, and like we don't need it. So, just being very clear and like explaining the processes behind things. All right. So now we're going to be finishing up soon, but I want to complete today with like a complete action plan. So we talked about the CEO day, and now I want to bring it to like the 30 days CEO transition challenge. Okay. So a month long, and I'm going to share your step-by-step plan for beginning this injector practitioner, whatever you want to, whatever it is, to CEO transition over the next month. So week 1 is the assessment and awareness. So day 1 to 2, which is going to be your time audit. So track every hour of your time for 48 hours. Categorize activities as CEO work, manager role, or technician work. We talked about it. Day 3 to 4 is your financial analysis. So review the last 90 days of your financial data, calculate profit margins by service type, and identify your most and least profitable activities. Now, day 5 to 7 is your vision setting. This is where you define what success looks like for you personally and professionally, and write down your 1 year, 3 year, 5 year goal plans. Week 2 is going to be about quick wins and delegation. So this is about day 8 to 10. You're probably going to have to like pause this. It's a lot. So this is where you identify your delegation opportunities. And I want you to list 20 tasks that you currently handle, like personally you, and then choose 5 that could be delegated immediately with very minimal training. And there's definitely things you're going to find there. If like there has to be. If there isn't, it means you're being too nitpicky. Okay, day 11 to 12 is where you create your standard operating procedures. So your SOPs, document the processes for 2 to 3 tasks that you want to delegate and you want to get off your roster. Now, day 13 to 14, begin small delegations. Delegate 1 to 2 simple tasks to existing team members, or you can hire a virtual VA. Yeah, me if you want advice on that. And this can be for your admin tasks. Then that brings us into week 3, systems and strategies. So if I sound so out of breath, I feel like I am. Again, it's because I started batch doing my content on the first Monday of every month, and I'm literally just talking all day. I also get really passionate and into this stuff. So I feel like I'm just like hyped up. And I've had coffee. But okay. So week 3, systems and strategies. That's day 15, like 15 to 17. Deep breath. Okay, so this is where you design your first CEO day. So you're gonna schedule and prepare for a 4-hour strategic planning session, just you, yourself, and I. Go somewhere cozy and somewhere where you're not like you can really focus. And this is where you're just going to start using the framework that we provided earlier to do your CEO day. Now, day 18, you're going to like actually execute the CEO day. So you complete your first CEO day following the detailed agenda that you came up with. Days 19 to 21 is where you're going to implement the CEO day insights. So take action on those top 3 priorities that you were identified during your CEO day. Now, week 4 is for optimization and planning. That's day 22 to 24. This is where you create weekly CEO time blocks. So you're going to schedule those 2 to 3 hour blocks in your weeks for ongoing strategic work. I want you to protect this time like you would protect your patient's time. It's more important than even that. Okay? You need to like really value, and it's just like you need to do this for your business. It's very important. 25 to 27, this is where you're going to plan your 90-day transformation. So based on everything that you've learned, I want you to create a detailed 90-day plan for your continued transition to CEO. And then day 28 to 30 is where you build accountability. So you share your plans with a mentor, or a consultant or a peer group, or whoever it may be, and establish those regular check-ins to maintain momentum. And if you are looking for something like this, I have a couple of different options, but my number one foundational program is a 6-month coaching container where we do bi-weekly calls. You get access to all of my resources. You can check my link in bio. I have a ton of courses, so you get access to all those plus some more hidden secret ones for my VIP coaching clients. So bi-weekly calls, I'm completely ingrained into your business, and like we go speed 120 and just get right into it. So that's one option. And then, okay, so then we want to start measuring your 30-day progress. So this is where we get into like those quantitative metrics. So we look at hours spent on the CEO level activities. We talked about that previously. So remember, we're labeling our activities. So the CEO level activities, I want you to target I want you to target whatever number or percentage that is and increase it about by 20%. That would be good. And then tasks successfully delegated, I want you to target about 5+ tasks that you've delegated. I want you to save time through this delegation. Um, by having a target of 5 tasks delegated, you should have about 5+ hours weekly delegated. Now, in terms of strategic decisions made, I want your target to be at least 3 major decisions made in your business, like CEO level decisions. And then in terms of qualitative metrics, so we want to see increased clarity about your business direction. We want to see a reduced feeling of being overwhelmed because we're actually putting things in place that should relieve a bit of that overwhelmed feeling and feel like you're on the right track. You're getting somewhere. Like these are real, tangible strategies. This is like high level. What I'm sharing with you is very high level business that I've taken from my MBA and from multiple startups and businesses that I've worked with. And I've worked with some of the biggest businesses in medical, like in the world. So I'm taking all of that and I'm sharing like these are the most important things and these will move the needle if you do them. And when you have a gain a greater confidence in your business decisions because you have things to back these decisions now. Like you're thinking like a CEO, you're acting like a CEO. And then improved team engagement and buy-in. So important as well. Like you can't really scale alone. You need to have that team on board. You need to be engaging and leading that team appropriately. And that's just how you get this done. So now let's talk about some of the business intelligence tools. These are like very useful. So like things like financial dashboards for real-time revenue tracking or client management systems that have lifetime value analytics, time tracking software for productivity analysis, project management tools for strategic initiative tracking. Like all these things are super important. So if one of those kind of popped out to you as like, yeah, one of those would really help me, start looking into it. If you want recommendations, please DM me. Some things that you can use for strategic planning tools. So, and I've implemented this in our discussions today, but there's the SWOT. You've probably heard of it before, SWOT analysis. You can find templates for this for clinic assessment, and it's also included in my coaching container. OKR, which is objectives and key results. So these are frameworks for actual goal setting. You could look at financial forecasting models for growth planning or competitive analysis, templates for your market positioning when you're comparing against competitors. And then in terms of your team, you want to look at like training them, certifying them, and tracking all of this, performance review, goal setting frameworks, communication platforms for team coordination. Some people like to use Slack. It's an example. Succession planning, so templates for leadership development. And if I were to just give you some like I love reading and I think it's like an easy, fun way, like it can be you time to develop yourself is reading for CEO development and like business strategy. So a couple recommendations for books is there's one called Good to Great by Jim Collins. That's an amazing one. The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. What are some other ones? I have like 20 books on my nightstand. I'm obsessed with reading. Okay, leadership development would be the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. There's one called Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. That's a good one. The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. And then in terms of like you want better systems, there's The Learn Startup by Eric Ries. There's The Goal by something with an E and then Goldratt, pretty sure. And then there's Systems Thinking for Managers by Diana Wright, I believe. So those are some really good ones in those different areas. All right, so this was a long one today, but your immediate challenge here is I'm going to challenge you this week to schedule your first CEO day within the next 7 days. Okay. And I don't care how busy you think you are, how many patients or clients you've scheduled, or how impossible it seems, like find the 4 hours and block them off completely. Just like do it after you listen to this. Even if it feels uncomfortable, even if your brain tells you you're like too busy, even if you feel guilty about not seeing patients, like literally move someone, just do it anyways. This is how we create change. This is how we make impact. Okay. This is how you grow. This one shift can actually change everything about how you are approaching your business, but we need to make a stance and we need to make change now. So remember, you can't scale what you can't step back from, and you can't improve what you cannot see clearly, and you can't lead what you're buried inside in. So after completing, this first CEO day that we've spent a lot of time talking about, you should have a clear identification of your biggest business opportunities specific action plans for addressing your top priorities, a deeper understanding of where your time should be focused in your business, renewed excitement about your business potential, right? It's getting that energy back and that excitement back, and then concrete steps to take in the next following week and so on. So next week, so next Monday, we're going to talk about in the next episode the hidden profit formula. So it's going to be a juicy one. And this is where we're going to talk about how to actually add 50K without seeing more patients. So we're going to completely counter to the hustle culture narrative that dominates our industry. And while most clinic owners believe that revenue growth means more hours, more patients, more burnout, I'm going to show you exactly how the smartest clinics are scaling without sacrificing all the sanity. So, like an extension to what we talked about today. We'll also touch on membership programs that create predictability and recurring revenue, retail systems that are going to generate, 10 plus K a month in passive income, and then upsell flows that feel natural and valuable to your clients. And you're going to discover like why working more is actually, at the end of the day, preventing you from earning more, and the very specific profit drivers that are going to scale independently of your personal time. You'll also learn about how to create recurring revenue that streams that work while you're like sleeping. Like you need to have multiple streams of business to be super successful. So some of these are going to be passive, and I want to help you create those. And I also want to help you look at like the psychology behind premium pricing and why clients actually prefer it and how we do that. So yeah, this episode is going to be next week again on the Monday. It's going to be perfect for clinic owners who are tired of just trading time for money and are ready to build real wealth instead of just income. So before we finally wrap up here, I know it's been an intense one and I hope you got a lot out of it, but I want to leave you with this thought. Your clients don't just need your clinical skills. They actually need your leadership and are looking for that. They need you to build a business that can serve them at the highest level, consistently and sustainably. Your team needs this as well. But you cannot provide that level or type of leadership if you're going to be constantly buried in the day-to-day operations of your business. It will not work. It is not sustainable. It's not scalable. You will waste so many years. You can't create systems if you're always fighting and burning out fires. And you cannot scale impact if you're trapped in the treatment chair. We need to get you out eventually. We need to have that shift from practitioner to CEO. And it is not about abandoning, sorry guys. It's not about abandoning your clinical passion here. It's about actually amplifying your impact by building something that's bigger than what you can accomplish with just your hands. The whole thing about this is your passion, your movement, your creativity. So step into that CE role. Your future business, your team, your clients, and your family are all counting on you and cheering you on to make this transition, as well as am I. Like, I know you got this. I know you can do this. And it just takes one small strategic step at a time. So thanks again for today, and I'll see you next week.